Hello, you listen to Count Richard von Coudenhove Kalergi. Today is Tuesday the 10th of September and here's a couple of comments since my last video. In Italy, Rome, police have detained 10 people in the central Abruzzo region for alleged tax crimes aimed at laundering money for Islamist extremist groups, with 8 Tunisian and 2 Italian suspected of financing enormous sums of money linked to al-Nusra. One of those detained was an imam from a mosque close to the city of Teramo. And in the moral inversion continues. Finland, a Christian MP is being investigated by police for an alleged hate crime after she shared an image from the Bible while questioning why the National Lutheran Church was participating in an LGBT pride event. In response to criticism, she said that she was questioning church leadership, not gay people. This brings to 3 the number of Finnish MPs under investigation for incitement. And in the UK, police were called to a school in East Sussex where over 150 parents and children were protesting outside the prior school over a decision that banned skirts and forced girls to wear trousers in changes to uniforms to make them more gender neutral, with the school announcing that girls wearing skirts would be refused entry. Administrators had said that they had brought in gender-neutral uniforms over concerns at the length of the girl's skirt and to accommodate transgender pupils. A local MP who attended the school as a child said that this was political correctness gone mad again. The cost of the new uniform was in the region of £120. And more from that canary in the coal mine, Sweden. A Swedish behavioural scientist, Magnus Söderlund, has suggested that eating other people after they die could be a means of combating climate change. The scientist was appearing on Swedish TV4 this week regarding food of the future, and it is set to hold seminars called Gastro Summits, where he intends to discuss the possibility of eating people in the name of cutting down greenhouse emissions. According to his research, the main problem with the idea is the widespread taboo of eating people, and that conservative attitudes could make it hard to convince Swedes to take up the practice. Does anyone remember the science fiction film Soylent Green starring Charlton Heston from the 1970s? It must be this guy's favourite film. You got to hand it to the Swedes. They really have a sense of humour after all. All to think that George Orwell once said about Sweden, "I thought Swedes sounded a dull country." Well, George, that was before Sweden took in 1.3 million migrants over a 10-year period that brought such cultural enrichment that Sweden had the world's first rape crisis centre for victims of male rape. Now that's progress. On a more serious note, please Google the name Charlene Downs, a missing UK schoolgirl, read the story and weep. A 39-year-old man in the city of Helsingborg has been given a conditional sentence of 2 years probation and fines of €300 after labelling Jews the progeny of pigs. The man was speaking at a demonstration organised by the Swedish Palestinian Centre in July 2017. The man admitted that the speech he had given in Arabic rather than in Swedish contained the hateful phrases, but defended himself by saying that they were not directed at all Jews but at the State of Israel. In the Swedish municipality of Bengtsfors, council has petitioned the national government for aid due to the massive cost of taking in more migrants than it can afford. Last year, a report from the Swedish National Institute of Economic Research claimed that many municipalities across the country will be forced to raise taxes, specifically stating that mass migration costs as the reason. With the challenges the demographic shift has brought, when you factor in over 50,000 Swedes leaving each year, the population growth is still around 100,000 people per year. Peaking in 2016 with 144,000 people, which has placed an unnecessary strain on social services and creating a massive shortage of housing. This sounds familiar. And on Friday, the lawyer who first represented the US rapper ASAP Rocky in an assault case involving his entourage and an Afghan migrant has been shot in the head and chest after leaving a residential building in Stockholm around 9 a.m. He was brought to Karolinska University Hospital and is in a stable condition. Sorry about this. One man has been arrested and police are charging him with attempted murder. Several others have been taken into custody for questioning. And during the week, the King of Sweden, Carol XVI, has expressed public concerns over the number of shootings and explosions linked to crime. Greece, according to a Greek newspaper this week, Macron and Merkel are looking to ban anti-mass migration countries from the EU passport-free zone, which will mean a reform of the Dublin Agreement. Among the priorities are the issue of migrant distribution and family reunification. The Greek government recently announced measures to clamp down on illegal migration after over 500 migrants arrived on the island of Lesbos in one day. France. Figures released by the Assembly of French Departments have revealed that the cost of underage migrants is costing the French taxpayer €2 billion per year. Around 41,000 under the age of 18 live in France, 95% of being male, with most of the underage migrants are from sub-Saharan Africa, and represents up to 20% of all minors that receive social assistance. When a migrant arrives claiming to be a minor, the government has 5 days to speak with them and find out details of their background. Since January, authorities are able to request biometric data and, with a court order, test the age of the migrant. As a result, half of those tested are actually adults. This has got so ridiculous that earlier this year in the southwest France, a migrant claiming to be 17 years old, but authorities were able to connect him with a passport that he had previously used and found out he was actually 47. Last year, police busted a network of migrants who were using forged documents to claim that they were underage and traced it to a civil servant in the Ivory Coast, who was then arrested. France saw in 2018 a record number of asylum claims of 123,625, up 23% on 2017, which had also been a record year. In Hungary, speaking at a conference organised on the demographics, Viktor Orban said that economic incentives, not migration, are the answer to low birth rates and decreasing population, and to make it more beneficial to have children instead of not having them. Also in attendance was the Serbian President and the Czech Prime Minister. Hungary's new constitution, which was passed with a 2-3 majority in 2012, states that marriage is between a man and a woman and must be protected. Former Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott also spoke of, quote, the need for larger families rather than relying on immigration, and was very critical of those who said that childbearing was bad due to CO2 emissions. In the fullness of time, I hope Orban, along with a few others, will be given their rightful place in history for defending the family and Christian values of Europe. Unlike Veruca, who will be remembered for letters to Kylie Minogue and watching Love Island and placing Dimmy status on Irish citizens. And now for some domestic issues. Under a Freedom of Information request, it was revealed that more than 10% of asylum seekers who arrived in Ireland last year in search of international protection failed to show up for their first official interview and never entered the refugee system. Statistics released showed that 3,673 people arrived in Ireland last year. However, 382 failed to turn up and disappeared. This shows that the system is flawed and must be tightened up, and is further proof that we are seen as a soft touch and are either remaining here illegally or using Ireland as a base to get to other European countries, probably England. It has been revealed that in Oughterard, Galway, the Gateway Hotel is being refurbished and turned into yet another direct provision centre. This follows the same pattern of a closed hotel being refurbished by a company that has contracts for direct provision centres. Face Yard Construction has other direct provision centres in Portlaoise and Dublin, and the response from Sinister Stanton to legitimate concerns from this small community, which has only one primary school and one secondary school, a Garda station which once had 20 Gardaí, which is now shut, and one GP, is that it is inappropriate to discuss it because the process is ongoing, and the lack of consultation with local communities is government policy, as if we inform people there would be protests and nothing would happen. Gran Torino did an excellent report from Lismore in Waterford on March the 5th of this year, and it shows the attitude and arrogance of the Department of Immigration and Justice towards rural communities, and shows what people really think about the process, not the filtered and politically correct version peddled by RTE and other mainstream media outlets. With Gran Torino's question repeatedly asked, quote, "Can you confirm or deny the existence of ISIS in any direct provision centre in Ireland?" Sinister Stanton couldn't get out of there quick enough. By the way, his question was never answered. Interestingly, one of the questions from an audience was a gentleman alleging of a corrupt Gardaí who was involved in facilitating of illegal migrants getting documents stamped. Sounds like the guard that the story broke in the last couple of weeks. His concerns were dismissed and ignored. Oughterard is in Connemara, perched on the shores of Lough Corrib, with a population of just over 1,300 people. I stayed once in a most beautiful B&B called Lakeland Midsummer Lake House, run by a very nice gentleman called Gary. A room that had a patio doors that opened out onto decking and views of Inishcash, another island in Lough Corrib. The town also featured Oughterard Castle, a particularly well preserved example of an Irish tower house built in 1500 by the O'Flahertys, whose family motto is "Fortune favours the strong," and is one of over 200 tower houses in Galway. Figures from the Department of Foreign Affairs: there has been a 550% increase in the number of cases of suspected passport fraud in the last 2 years. More than 500 cases were investigated last year. In 2016, Passport Service investigated 78 suspected cases. Since 2016, a total of 237 of these cases have been forwarded to the Gardaí. The number of passports cancelled because of suspected fraud has increased by 71% over the past 2 years, and a further 240 cases are under investigation in the first 6 months of this year, with 46 being cancelled. Ray D'Arcy has yet again another example of anti-Irish garbage last week when he interviewed Dr. Ebun Joseph, a career development consultant at the Royal College of Surgeons. Her doctorate is not medical, but in social justice and equality studies. She goes on to defend the unemployment rate for Africans, which, according to her, runs between a staggering 43% to 63%, due, according to her, racist Irish attitudes. What the good doctor has actually done is give a very good reason why Ireland needs to stop this migration fraud. As for her mentioning group favouritism, maybe she should highlight the plight of Nigerians living in South Africa who are being attacked by the black South Africans. Or maybe she should tackle the issue of African criminality that runs from social welfare fraud to gangland violence, prostitution and drugs. And how would she explain, with such high unemployment rates, how come Nigerians are said to send home so much money back to Nigeria, as covered by the Irish Independent in May 2013. According to an article, they sent over €500 million that year, which equates to €26,000 for every man, woman and child of Nigerian origin. Well, there are a couple of thoughts which are my own. Thanks for listening. Good night and good luck.